You want to make your own TTRPG. You want to join the ranks of those who have influenced and twisted the little minds of players all over the world. Yes, it's a good ambition, but can you actually do it? How easy or how difficult or what should you even be thinking about when it comes to creating your own TTRPGs? Hello and welcome to today's episode. My name is Guy and we're going to be looking at how to make your own TTRPG, or at least we're going to be looking at it in broad strokes, because there are so many different components that one can go into when making your own TTRPG that it can be quite daunting. So in this overview video, if you like, we're going to be exploring sort of things about what kind of decisions you should make before you even start writing out the new rules that you have come up with. So that's what we're going to be going through today. Now, if you do want to see more videos on how to make your own TTRPGs, let me know in the doobly-doo down below, because, well, that's the only way that we know what you want to see. So I can't guarantee that you'll get it before, say, mid-January, but if you are interested and you do want to know, let us know. And whilst you're at it, hit that like button, and, well, you might as well hit the subscribe button. That way you won't miss out if I do a second video that I do for you to do. You know? Anyway, let's get straight into it. Okay, so first step number one. Uno, ichi, ein, number one. What is your goal in writing the TTRPG? Why are you even making it? Are you trying to improve upon something that has already been made? So you're going, well, we've homebrewed this system so much that it doesn't even look like the original system, so we might as well make it our own, and that way we can get rid of all of those old legacy things that we included and just start from scratch. So we're making something, we're improving something. Is it or an? I got stuck on or an. Is it a wholly new and completely different idea? You've decided, you know what, this whole dice thing is nonsense. From now on, we're going to be rolling grandmothers, and whoever's grandmother rolls the furthest succeeds in the task thereafter. You can come up with all kinds of crazy things, and there are TTRPGs out there that use dice. They use cards, playing cards. They use bespoke dice. They use bespoke playing cards. They use Jenga towers. They use pickup sticks. They use bouncing balls. They use car license plates. Yes, that is how I used to roleplay on the road. You use car license plates to give you your numbers. All kinds of craziness that exists out there, and that's a good thing. It allows us to explore options and go, that was a dumb idea. We won't use that one again. So either you are improving upon an existing system and creating a new one out of that, or you're starting from scratch. Either way, you need to know why you're doing it. Is it to have fun? Is it to create something that allows you to tell a story better? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing it? You have to be able to answer that question right up front. Now, when I look at the role-playing games that I have designed, or am still working on, I should say, oftentimes it was a case of, well, I really want to play Dungeons & Dragons, but I want to play it in the Wild West. So I need to invent rules for firearms. They didn't have them in the second edition very much. I want to include rules for shooting off of horseback and all those kinds of things. Or I really want to do a nautical campaign rule set. This was also second edition Dungeons & Dragons, where they didn't have naval combat. So you had to, we tried to figure out how to do it. And again, 20 years later, we finally did do it. And I'm quite happy to say it worked out quite well. So there it was, improving a system. Starting from scratch, I've been tasked by my significant other to try and come up with a rule system that doesn't involve any numbers. No mathematics at all, merely yes or no outcomes. That's an interesting one. That's more of a mental puzzle than anything else, because my immediate reaction was, don't be silly. Every role-playing game out there uses some form of mathematics, except for those that don't. So how do they work? Anyway, so you have to choose your reason. Why are you trying to make this game? And if your best reason is because I wanna, I'm not entirely sure that's going to help sustain you, because this is a long and arduous process, and you are going to have more people telling you what's wrong with it than you are going to have people telling you what's right with it. They're not going to tell you what's right with it, because they're not going to comment on that. They're going to say, oh, I didn't like how this worked. But what did you think about the rest? Oh, the rest was fine. It was great. It worked well. And so I'm not saying anything about it. I'm only telling you what I don't like. So it is a long journey. You need to stick to your core principle. And this was insight that I learned from working with a good friend of mine. I've worked with a couple of friends trying to create role-playing systems. They've always fizzled out and died because our goals, why we were making these things, were dissimilar. They were not in concert. I had a goal for a simple system. The other partner had a goal for a system that was so simple it was beyond simple. It was, you only have 5 skills for everything? I'd whittled it down to 20. You want 5? That's very, very different. So again, knowing what your goal is very important. Point number 2. Uno, dos. Twier, zwei, ni. Point number 2 is you have to choose your genre. Now, why do I say this? There are a few systems out there that are generic. You can use them for medieval settings, for fantasy settings, for science fiction settings, for modern day settings. You can, but they oftentimes require tweaking. What I find generally helps me a lot more when creating a basic rule system is to choose the genre that you most enjoy playing in. Because what that does is that allows you to unlock all of the information that you have in your head for the other role-playing games that you've been playing, most likely from the same genre, because you now can take those rules, take those things, look at what they did, look at your system and go, okay, I can use that, I can use that. If you go with a generic system, you're then going to be struggling to try and reconcile how do you fly a Boeing 747 versus a Star Destroyer versus then casting magic. So you're starting to try and juggle a lot of different mechanics, and it can become overwhelming. Whereas if you choose to do simply a fantasy setting, well, now the only thing you have to worry about is magic, not necessarily all of the components about flying, or about sailing, or about high-speed impact crashing, and the like. So choose your genre. That is definitely my advice. Number three is about choosing how you are going to determine outcomes. Now, this might seem a little bit backwards. Shouldn't you try and work out what the system is first? No, because your outcome resolution is going to be, I think anyway, your guiding light in terms of what mechanics you should be using anyway. So is it random chance? Is it just roll a die? Maybe you can add some numbers to it, but ultimately it's just coming down to random chance. You succeed or you fail. Is it interpretation? So there are games that I have played where there are no dice, and it is interpretive. Well, you wanted to fix the wagon, and you did say in your character history that you used to work as a wagon wheel maker, as a wagoneer. I don't know what is the official term for someone who makes wagons. I want to say croupier, but that's a cooper, but that's a barrel maker. Nonetheless, you have some background in wagon wheel fixing, or you're going to steal a wagon wheel off of another wagon, and so you can see how it's done. That gives you +3 to your option. The difficulty was 2, and so you succeed. So you're interpreting the outcome based on some values that you have in your character sheet. It could be quite literally beating values. So I have 5, you have 2, I succeed. No dice unnecessary, it's a straight up comparison. Or it could simply be, do you have the skill pathfinding? Yes, then you can track anything regardless of the situation. It could also be through agreement. I have played games where everybody votes on whether your outcome succeeds or not. It's not a very fast system, and oftentimes the people involved might vote yes because they want you to succeed because they have a vested interest. Sometimes they vote no because it's going to be comically interesting, but narratively destructive. Or is it perhaps a point allocation system? Well, this round you have 10 points. You can spend those however you like. You can spend 1 point to defeat my 2 difficulty. You'll fail. You have to spend 3 points. That leaves you only with 7. So you've got to guard knowing that you're going to run out of points. Whatever the mechanic, there are multiple ways of resolving an outcome. There are multiple ways of determining an outcome. Why do you need this though? Why do you need to determine an outcome? Well, to put it quite simply, that's part of our game. It would be like saying, well, you could play soccer without a ball, but I'm not entirely sure how you'd keep track of who's winning and who isn't. If you leave it up to the players, they're both going to claim victory. So you do need to have some kind of resolution, some kind of effect that you know is going to allow you to determine the outcome. Why do we do this first before we do anything else, like determining the mechanics, the skills, if you're going to have skills, all those kinds of things? Why do we do this first? Well, we do it because it's A, going to inform us in terms of what our system is going to be using, but B, it puts us in the right mindset. So if we are going to be using some random decision-making process, we then know that our mechanics should be aligned to a random process, and that they shouldn't become definite yes or no's, which would be more towards perhaps an interpretive situation or towards a value system. So we need to know exactly how we want this to play out. Should it be gimmicky? Do you want to say, well, I want a system that no one else has ever done before, so we're going to be rolling stones, and we're going to have little green stones and red stones and blue stones, and you have to roll them over a circle, and the stones that remain in the middle of the circle are the stones that count. The ones that roll out the sides count against you. You deduct the ones from the sides from the ones in the middle, and whatever's left, that's your score. That's entirely up to you. If you feel that that's the most practical way of resolving your particular conflict, then that's the way that you do it. But remember, you've got to go back and ask yourself, well, does this fit within the genre? Because there are some games that use playing cards, and they use playing cards because there's a Wild West kind of flavor, which is where poker comes from, so it's thematically relevant. There, it's a chance, it's randomness, you're drawing cards, and then you're trying to influence that randomness, but it's still a random generator, effectively, it's just using cards. There are other games where it has nothing to do with the system whatsoever, it has nothing to do with the genre whatsoever, it's just a fun, cool mechanic. And those are one-shot type adventures that you play when you have nothing better to do and you don't particularly care about the story. And then you want to look at how does that all fit in terms of why you wanted to make this game in the first place. If you get frustrated because the dice are always rolling against you, what's the point of using another random generator system if it's going to be doing exactly the reason why you didn't like the first system in the first place? So it's time to then stretch your wings and go, okay, we're going to go somewhere else now. We're going to go looking somewhere else. We're going to go and do something else. That becomes incredibly important. Number four, mechanics. Now we finally get down to it. The actual mechanics. So you've determined this is going to be, let's say, a yes or no. It's going to be yes or no. That's the only mechanic we're doing. And that's what my partner has asked for. A role-playing game that is just yes or no. What mechanic do we then employ? How do we determine yes or no? Is that a heads or tails? But that's more random than just a straight up yes or no. So we don't want any kind of mathematics. And when you're flipping a coin, there is a statistical probability of a yes or a no. So that's still a random value. Whereas if the outcome is either a flat yes or a flat no, then there is no probability it is either yes or it is no. We do not have any Schrodinger's cats running around. So when we then look at the mechanic, we go, well, that means everything then has to boil down to yes or no. Does that mean that we're going to have skills? Whereas you have a cooking skill, or a driving skill, or a photography skill, or a fighting skill? Or does that mean that rather than having that, we're going to have a collection of abilities which when added together, no, we can't have mathematics involved. So we're going to have a collection of abilities that are either yes or no scenarios, and that will allow us to determine our exact outcome. There are role-playing games out there that don't have any skills whatsoever. They simply have your abilities and your disciplines, and you derive from that whatever it might be to solve that particular skill. Do you see how important it is to have defined how your role-playing game is going to work in terms of its outcomes before you start looking at anything else? So in a yes or no type of scenario, I can't see that skills are going to be particularly useful here. You can drive, yes or no. Okay, so that does solve that question. But can you drive better than somebody else? In this case, there can only be an answer of no. Because whether you have been driving for 1 month or whether you have been driving for 6 months, you can still drive. There is no gradation, there is no differentiation. So perhaps then we don't need skills. Perhaps we need something else. And so that's how the journey goes. Now that we're in the mechanics phase, we're now starting to say what will allow us to determine whether you are a good driver or a bad driver or a better driver. Do we need to even have the definition of better driver? So there are a lot of things that then come into play as we start to examine that. Once you have, however, once you have decided, okay, so the characters are going to have the ability to choose yes or no, there is no mathematics involved, and what we're going to do is we're going to tie that to, let's say, 12 abilities. Each ability is going to cover a specific area within this role-playing game. If you have the ability, whatever you're attempting to do, the answer is yes. If you don't have the ability, whatever you're attempting to do, the answer is no. That's it. Straight up. There is no gradation. There is no better or worse. There is just yes or no. So in step 5, we now test our system. Not with friends, not yet. We're not going to get them involved just yet. We still have to make some tweaks, some adjustments on our own. And the very first one we're going to do is we're going to test it against a standard possible scenario. The character using your role-playing system must climb a cliff. How would they do it? In my yes or no type of game, it would be, do they have a physical skill? Yes, then they can climb the cliff. Or perhaps it's a dexterity skill, or perhaps it's a mountaineering skill. I don't know. I haven't worked out the minutiae yet. But if the answer is yes, then they climb the cliff. Perhaps it isn't even a question of having the ability to climb. Perhaps it's a question of gear. Do they have grappling hook and rope? Yes, they can climb the cliff. So that is then what you test your system against. If it's playing cards, if it's Jenga, if it's pickup sticks, if it's bouncing balls, test it against that one first. Helping someone else. Can your character help somebody else? In my scenario, the answer would be yes or no. We want them to be able to help each other. So we want collaboration. We want the characters to work together because perhaps if we go all the way back to our first decision, we want the game to feel more like a team rather than as individuals playing in a group space. So the answer is yes, we want our characters to be able to help each other. So how would they do it? In my scenario, maybe there's a ability that says assist or works well with others. Yes or no. If it's yes, then yes, you work well with somebody else. Do you help them? Well, again, I don't have any gradation within my role-playing system, apparently. So if you have the ability, does work well with others, and let's say then the thing is mountain climbing, and your character has mountain climbing, yes, then the two of you will be able to climb the mountain, because you can work well with others, and you can mountain climb. Do you see what I'm driving at? Is you're going to start testing all of the usual role-playing scenarios against your own system. So the next one, discovering a hidden door or a secret clue. Is that another skill? Is that an ability? Is it a talent? Is it a feat? Is it a focus? Is it a... You start to come up with these things. Start to test the system. And then, of course, melee combat. Can you engage in melee combat? Yes, you can. How do you engage in melee combat? And how do you determine damage? How do you determine the ability to dodge or block out of the jump out of the way? Maybe you don't. In my scenario, I'm particularly stuck. Can they use a sword? Yes. So does that mean they automatically are dealing damage to the enemy? If the enemy can use a shield, then are they automatically cancelled out? I will need to go and test the system and to come up with a solution where there is no maths, and I can't give you the solution, by the way, folks. I am literally making this up during this video as we go along. I will have to go and find solutions that are yes, no, and then the outcome is based on certain yes or no's, and then the damage is based on yes or no, or maybe there is no damage. Maybe this is completely a theatrical kind of thing. Do you have a sword? Yes. Does your opponent have a shield? No. The opponent is no longer standing. They double over and they are dying. It could be something as simple as that, because then we need to look at ranged combat. In almost any system I can think of, there is always ranged combat. That was one of the fundamental steps that mankind took when they realized they could throw something at an enemy and cause it to move less than when they were trying to just run up to it. And it also gave the advantage of not being hit back by the enemy when you were throwing things at range. So how does your range combat work? Is it fundamentally different from melee combat? Is it fundamentally the same? In my system, I suspect it's going to be exactly the same thing, just with no return damage being possible. There are some role-playing systems out there where only the players roll dice, and so only the players determine whether the enemy hits, or whether the enemy fails, or whether the enemy deals damage, or whether it doesn't. So it's something to take into consideration. Step number 6. Now you take your system and you test it with your friends. And I cannot emphasize this enough. When we were writing the book, Complete Guide to Nautical Campaigns, we had the most amazing playtesters come in, and they sat around the table and they tried to do stuff. They tried to break the system. They tried to do things that I hadn't anticipated in the system. They succeeded 100% of the time. They asked, "Oh, how do I do this?" And you go, "I don't know. I hadn't accounted for that." "Oh, how do you do that?" "You do it this way." "Oh no, that doesn't make sense. That's broken." And even when I shipped it off to other people to try and roleplay, they sent back almost as many pages as the rulebook was in terms of questions. "You've said this, but there's no accounting for that. You've said this, but this is," etc., etc., etc. So there's lots and lots and lots and lots of things that you need to take into account. Once you've tested it a couple times, not just once, a couple times, my suggestion would be test it at least twice before you change anything. Then change stuff based on those testings, and then only do you update it, and then you test it again and again. And your objective is to whittle down the amount of feedback that you're getting from your players until eventually they're going, "Oh, can we play in your system? Because I really love it. I really enjoy it. It's so cool. It does this. It solves that problem. It solves the next problem." So that's what you're looking for when you're testing your system, is trying to get it to the point where there is nothing. But don't doubt yourself. You might get players going, "Oh, this is terrible. Why did you think this would ever be interesting?" Try it with different groups. That's the other important thing, is your own home group might be so used to the style that you normally run using the normal system that they don't want to even know about this new system. So they're naturally going to be resistant to it. Take it online. There are so many things that you can find out there. Table Find a Wizard, for example. That's where you should go, and the right link will be in the video today, trust me. So go and have a look for different groups to play it on. The more people you can play test it with, the stronger the system will definitely be. Then, well, now what you need to do is, last step, you start fleshing it out, because they're going to want to know the equipment. Oh, can I buy equipment? People love buying equipment. I don't know why, they often don't use it, but they like to have it, and they like to earn cash so they can go and buy more. You're going to need to work out equipment. You're going to need to work out whether that equipment has durability. Does it last? Does it break? What are the chances of it being destroyed by fire? How heavy is it? Is that something that you even need to worry about in your TTRPG? All those kinds of questions. So you're starting to flesh it out. You're starting to now build up all those additional things. And it's at this point that you then start to add in additional mechanics as well. Oh, well, the players felt it was a little bit difficult to create a unique character because you only had 3 basic character classes in your first test. So you can now add in another 15 if you want to. They then felt, well, leveling, there was no leveling. So how do we level? Please tell us how we level, work out how we level, etc., etc., etc. Once you've done that revision, guess what? You're back to playtesting, and you want to playtest that thing again, playtest all of the additions that you've now added on, because they may very well have broken the system, and then you go back and you revise. And you say, does this work with my core original purpose, my original plan of having a system which was either yes or no, or whatever your particular goal was. Does this rule fit with that? Does this rule fit with that? Because you might find that as you expand, as you add on to this particular rule system, it starts to change and evolve, and sometimes shifts back towards the role-playing system that you're used to playing, or sometimes gets to the point where you're like, this just isn't actually fun. This mechanic, no matter which way I twist it, no matter which way I look at it, just isn't going to work. And then my last piece of advice to you, because that's it for this particular video. I've gone on for way too long anyway. The last piece of advice that I have for you is don't give up. The current rule system that I've been trying to get off of the ground, called the Tri system and the Tri-Fi system, those I have been writing for years. I have had people come in and join me, and they've added or they've subtracted. They haven't had the same goal, so they've pulled out, or I've pulled out, and it's sort of been malleable and it's been evolving, constantly changing, constantly adjusting. And now it's in a place where I think, you know what? I could now start get to the point where I am kind of happy with it, because I have players going, oh, I really loved that system. I want to play it again. But having played some new systems in the last 3 months, I'm going, yeah, but I think I could make it better. I think I could make it better. And then with, my partner going, well, I only want to play a game that says yes or no because I've never role played before and I think it would be a really good, easy system to get into. I'm going, that is a whole different challenge. That is a whole different challenge. For me, it's an intellectual one, and one that I want to do, obviously. But yeah. It's a different kettle of fish. Once you start designing systems, though, forever will you be designing systems, because you'll start to see, oh, cool, well, I can tweak this and I can do that. Oh, let's try this mechanic. Whoa, that didn't work. But if I just tweak and tinker and this and that's how you get gnomes. That's how you get gnomes. All right. So to avoid gnomes, I'm ending this video. I wish you and yours the very best of luck if you are going to be designing your own system. And if you do, join our Discord, discord.gg/greatgm, and come and share it with us. There are 5,000 playtesters just ready and waiting to try out your new system. Well, we don't have a sponsor for today other than our wonderful Patreons. Now, our Patreons get amazing rewards every month. They get maps, they get tables that help them create random locations and all kinds of things. You're seeing that on screen now. So a big thank you to all of our patrons. Now, another thank you to our Kickstarter, which is Epic Battle Maps. It was fully funded within 5 hours of launch. Thanks again to your amazing support. We're moving up, increasing, reaching towards those new stretch goals, which will just add more maps to this collection. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, Epic Battle Maps is our offering. It contains 24 maps. It will increase over time, but it contains 24 maps at the moment, which you can then use virtually or around the table in a nice, neat, compact fold-out book like this one behind me. It's a standard size book. It fits on your bookshelf, but the maps are absolutely huge within it, and it's doing really well. The link for that Kickstarter is down below. If you want to support us, that would be absolutely amazing. And yes, so a big thank you to you for watching all the way to the end of today's video, and until next time, I wish you and yours the very happiest of gaming.